Firstly, we need to understand what is Agile. Agile software development applies an iterative and incremental development method. Unlike its predecessor or the opposite, which is called a waterfall, which happens in different stages and has each a gate for each phase. For Agile, we have where software requirements and solutions evolve through collaboration between stakeholders and product developers. Agile, furthermore, involves identifying requirements and developing solutions via collaborative effort by teams that are self-organized, cross-functional, and involve their customer or end users. This is very key to ensure that develops what solves for the business need and customer needs. Lastly, Agile is good for buying and managing software development when business conditions change rapidly. That is Agile in short. Now that we've explained what is Agile, we are using the Scrum Agile method. This is a framework that helps describe a set of meetings, tools, and roles that work in concert to help teams structure and manage their work. We've chosen this framework versus the other ones like your Kanban, Red, or REP because we believe it will meet the need. This framework is heuristic. It's based on continuous learning and adjustment to fluctuation factors. Scrum is structured to help teams naturally adapt to changing conditions, which is very key when doing an EA project or program. Lastly, the user requirements, and it helps with reprioritization, which is built into the process and short release cycle so that your team can constantly learn and improve. Doing enterprise architect project, this is a key factor to ensure that as we move along, we are able to learn what the business does and actually improve it. We've chosen this method to solve for the next 5 problems. Firstly, wrong scoping. You know, in enterprise architecture endeavors, you can't afford to have the wrong scope of work being worked on. Using this agile model will ensure only the required outputs are included in scope for the sprints. Secondly, the early payoff feeling. This is key as business stakeholders or customers like to see results of what they're investing in terms of enterprise architecture. Using the Scrum model, we know that the close interaction on a daily basis and periodical delivery of products assist with the early payoff of the EA management endeavor. Thirdly, commitment and involvement. In an enterprise architecture effort, we need a team that is committed to ensure that the work is finally delivered, even if there's interruptions externally and internally. Fourthly, autonomous teams. Scrum is based on autonomous, self directed, and self organized work teams. They motivate themselves and thus become efficient. This helps with administrative overhead flow. Again, we won't have to spend a lot of money hiring project managers using the Scrum model as the team will be self sufficient. Lastly, iterative output, a very key element. Incremental nature of agile development allows us to develop different products of EA managed at different rates. For example, under the landscape, we can produce different artifacts that ensure that it's iterative and progressive. To the next slide. Now we look at actually how we integrate CSVLOD method with Scrum. We believe that you firstly need to set up the agile team, plan the work, and deliver artifacts. When you integrate this method with this model, then you will have solved for actually adapting this enterprise architecture model into an agile method. Let's look at how we achieve this. In setting up the agile team, you need to map the Scrum roles to the EA stakeholders and roles. You do this to ensure that you are aligned and parallel to what you need to do for EA and also how you will deliver via a Scrum model. Firstly, you would define a product owner. From an EA perspective, this person will represent the voice of the customer. For example, they will have the product backlog, and in an instance, they can have the landscape and decide what will get mapped first using input from business leaders. Secondly, you set up your Scrum team. From an enterprise architecture perspective, your Scrum team would be made up of enterprise architects. These are the guys responsible for mapping and dealing with business. From a Scrum perspective, you would have customers, From an EA perspective, you would have your EA stakeholders. This includes your business leaders, system owners, executive, etc. Fourthly, you would have the Scrum Master, a very key role. This is the person that maintains clear focus for team dealing with hurdles. From an EA perspective, this would be the most experienced team architecture or team leader. You would have a sprint goal, which would then be an equivalent of an EA product collected to support decision making, a product backlog. This will represent EA products that need to be delivered. For example, a preliminary solution designs and the landscape. Lastly, you would have a Scrum retrospective scenario where you actually constantly improve of the EA. Now we move to in planning the work. You will do three things. You will review the product backlog, and then you would then have the backlog tasks that are chosen expanded by the teams, and lastly, the artifacts that will be produced for that sprint will be chosen. And then lastly, you go into the exciting part, the sprint. But firstly, in the product backlog review, the product owner will decide the EA product that must be done for that sprint. In CSVLOD, for example, this could be in the landscape section where the system roadmap artifacts are delivered after the information is collected from business. In actually expanding the backlog task by the team, the Scrum team will break down the sprint goal and estimate the effort required for each artifact, e.g., in landscape, the landscape diagrams applicable might take 2 days, 3 days each. Lastly, the Scrum team, once the artifacts are chosen, the Scrum team has chosen which products to produce and will now commence with mapping, creating the artifacts in their chosen platforms. For example, QualiWare X or Aris. And then we go to the exciting part, the sprint. The team goes into a 30-day sprint, creating the artifacts. Products owners will be reviewing the work as it occurs, which is key to ensuring we deliver. Lastly, the exciting part. For us to get to a part where we actually deliver a workable or value adding artifact, we have three phases. This is the sprint review, sprint retrospective, potential shipping, potentially shippable product increments. After the sprint is done after 30 days, we have to have a sprint review. This step's concerned with presenting the developed EA product to the management, customers, and the product owner. That is all involved stakeholders presented with landscape diagrams. This is very good so that we have a session where business agrees that this is what they told us to map and actually find it very useful in their work. The second part is the sprint retrospective. The Scrum retrospective meeting is concerned with eliminating problems, which is avoiding waste, which leads to continuous improvement of the EA management function. This step is very important, as you would find that in EA programs, there would be a lot of wastage from wrong information provided or incorrect information provided. So, this is very key to ensure there's continuous learning within the team. Lastly, we have a potentially shippable product increment. This would be a finished artifact that is produced, a portfolio, which, for example, this would be a portfolio which includes different systems that will potentially solve and meet the company goals and is given to the customer. With these in mind, this is how we see that you can actually adapt the CSVLOD model into a Scrum Agile method or work in line to ensure that we actually add value to the business. Thank you.